This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. This week's episode is brought to you by the Friends of the Magic Word and our sponsor, themagicbookshop.com. I want to welcome two new members of the Friends of the Magic Word. Welcome to James Fowl. Thank you very much, Jim, for your donation and becoming a friend of the Magic Word. And also thank you, Kevin Wish, for becoming a friend of the Magic Word and for your ongoing pledge through patreon.com. Both of you guys really help a lot, as do all the rest of the people who have joined in the past and help keep this podcast going. Your membership to the Friends of the Magic Word means a lot, and particularly now during this difficult time. So thank you guys and all the rest of the Friends of the Magic Word for your financial backing to help keep this podcast going. Also, I again want to thank Eric Citron, who is the proprietor of themagicbookshop.com, for last week, and he had donated the $100 of magic books to a lucky winner that went to Clint Smith. Also, that he, during this past week, had a special deal that was 40% off for all purchases over $85. Well, that sale has ended, but he is continuing with the 15% discount that you can get off of all orders, regardless of how much that you might spend at themagicbookshop.com, if you just put in the promo code of Magic Word whenever that you check out. So thank you very much to themagicbookshop.com for sponsoring this podcast. We also have a new contest that is going, and I mentioned that last week, and it's continuing now into this next week. So if you didn't get a chance to register, now's a good time to go over there and do that. Well, I want to thank Michael Breger, who is another friend of the Magic Word, who had recently completed another ebook called The Expert at the Cod Table by S.W. Ordfish. It's a very funny book and some great stories and storylines for 13 different tricks that are in the ebook. Anyhow, he has offered a bundle of all 5 ebooks that he has produced. Now, Michael Breger is a fellow that you should know if you are a member of the International Brotherhood of Magicians, because he has had an ongoing column in the Linking Ring for a long number of years about cards. And he is brilliant, very funny, and a great guy. And thank you very much, Michael, for offering those books in this contest. So just go to themagicwordpodcast.com, and there at the bottom of this week's blog, you will see an entry form where you can sign up for a chance to win the 5 ebook bundle. Well, during this time right now when we are sheltered in place, I really would like to try to keep these podcasts somewhat generic. So regardless of whenever that you might be listening to this, whether it's going to be in 2020 or it's going to be in 2030, that's still going to be relevant. And there are a lot of things that I discussed this week with Meir Yedid, who is the magic dealer and owner proprietor of My Magic. And also he had a DVD, Finger Fantasies, and out that was, and several other things I would recommend, and you just need to check out his website at mymagic.com. But Meir has been a longtime friend and also someone who has been one of the longtime masters of ceremonies for Fechter's Finger Flicking Frolic in the afternoon. Now, a lot of the conventions have been canceled and are not taking place here for the next few months until we kind of get a handle on what's going on. So he had some time to talk with me and talk about the upcoming convention that won't be, but maybe a little bit about what we have done in the past at these conventions and how he has participated and some of his offerings. So he has a different perspective also on what we're doing and how we're doing it. I'm not going to go into too much more detail because I don't want to spoil it. I know what you're going to enjoy. The conversation I have here this week with my good friend, Mr. Meir Yedid, here on The Magic Word. Today, I've got with me someone who is typically I get to chat with during the 4F convention, Obie's 4F in Buffalo, or Batavia, I guess, New York each year. And this year, since we're not going to be having the convention, that I thought, well, let's actually talk before then. So kind of have our own little two-person convention, I guess, over here. Meir Yedid is someone who has done a lot for Magic over the years and continues to do so. And I mentioned the 4F. Actually, he's I think he's on the board of directors. Is that right, Meir? You're on the board?
Correct.
Yes. And he's also then one of the hosts or masters of ceremony during the weekend that we are there as well, helping to host one of the shows, and is always prepared with a lot of really funny lines, and is very adept at stage and close-up. In fact, he had won close-up for the Society of American Magicians not only once but twice for the close-up Magic Championship back in '81, then again later after he had amazingly, after he'd had a car accident and severed some fingers from a hand, and then won it again in 1988. And aside from that he is someone who has his own magic company that he's perhaps you may have gotten. You're on his mailing list. I hope so, because he has a lot of really great content that's in the newsletter, in addition to some wonderful and original ideas and tricks that he has available. And he's got, I think, about 7 magic books that he has published then as well, and has also been the Magician of the Year in New York City back in, he was the guest of honor at Fechter's back in 2003. But it was 97 when he was the Magician of the Year. I believe that was Assembly number 1, and they have this convention annually. So he was the guest of honor that year, or the person who was the Magician of the Year. So congratulations, and please welcome my guest this week, Meir Yedid. Hey, Meir.
Hey, thank you for that intro. I hope you didn't bore anybody. But
I'll make sure.
I noticed nothing that I've done in this century that warranted mention.
You're kind of resting on your laurels, so to speak. Is that right?
Yeah, I should update my website.
Well, you've been awfully busy. I mean, with the what's the name of the company that it's MyMagic, I think, .com?
Yeah, MyMagic or Meir Yedid Magic. Yeah, I was lucky to buy that name, because who wanted MyMagic at the time? I was very early on in buying domain names.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Meir Yedid, because that's such a popular Meir Yedid.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
everybody wants
that.
Yeah. When I got Scott Wells' Magic, I later found that there were other people. I guess more famous to me certainly was an NFL star, I think, with some football team, and that his name is Scott Wells. And then there's someone who is a ballet artist and has a ballet school, I think, out in California. His name's Scott Wells. And so I've had a couple times people have contacted me to see if I'm finished with my domain, if I'd like to sell it. But anyhow.
That's my dream. Disney has like the My Magic Pass, and there's been a movie called My Magic, and I'm waiting for someone to really want MyMagic.com and offer me enough to retire.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? We're all kind of waiting for that. Yeah, kind of camp out on that, then for a while. Now, I know that we had canceled this. Now, as we were recording this, by the way, for the listeners, we're kind of at the beginning or somewhere at towards the end of this sheltering in place. We're here on March the 25th and talking about the self-quarantine and coronavirus and everything then as well. And so it gives me an opportunity actually to sit and chat with you, because you and I have talked about trying to get together for some time, and we were planning on doing this, as I mentioned, later in Batavia. And when did you guys decide, and how did you go about making that decision with the board of directors to cancel the convention?
When everything else was being canceled, it was early. I don't know the exact date. It was a few weeks ago. And we had an online board meeting, and all the board members met online on a chat room, kind of thingy. I think all but one. And we were discussing different options. What we really were looking at originally was to delay it. But then when do you delay it to? The safest time to delay it seemed to be around September. And that caused a problem, because now you're going to have, the 50th convention 6 months before the 51st convention. And which means that, the 2021 convention is going to suffer, because a big chunk of our attendees come from outside the U.S., and that's a major expense with flights and things like that. So really, with the best decision, the most logical decision was to cancel this year and do the 50th anniversary next year. And it mathematically turns out that will be the 50th year.
So, what do you mean mathematically? Was this not really the 50th?
No. It's like when you have your 10th birthday, you haven't been alive 10 years. You've been alive 9 years. So
I see what you mean. Yeah. I got you. Okay.
It's the 50th convention. We just can't call it the 50th annual convention anymore.
Okay, that makes sense. And also, it probably makes sense to have canceled that then altogether as opposed to postponing, because had that been postponed, I would think there were others who would kind of be doing the same thing, going out into the future, and which will all be bunched up. But, another thing that kind of occurred to me was about how these conventions, for an example, let's say that Magic Live has been canceled for this year then as well.
Yeah, that really surprised me, but, he pretty much had no choice. Well, I was really looking forward to it. That was like my escape out of my house.
Literally, yeah. I'm sure a lot of other people are disappointed. 1,800 or 1,600 people, I guess, who are registered for the convention then as well. And there again, that's not one of those things you can postpone until later. And one of the reasons I know Stan likes to have this in the summer, obviously, is because that you have a lot of people who are home for the summer, and they have children that are home, and so he can't have it later. In other words, I've spoken with him about why doesn't he? He's been competing with Abbott's Get Together for the last couple of years. There's been some overlap there, and he was saying that the issue just has to do with the attendees having school starting a little bit earlier and earlier all the time, and so this is about as late as he can have it without having some people say, "Well, I can't come because my kids are going back to school." But now it's interesting that he's being forced back into 23rd through the 25th of August of 21 next year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's later in the month, so therefore they won't be competing in 21 next year. However, and I'm guessing it's just that there were other conventions that the Orleans Hotel was going to be having that have been postponed till next year also, and perhaps they might have been larger conventions that they were giving higher priority, saying, okay, we'll give you guys a chance to do this first before we do the other one. Typically, that his is the only thing that happens in August, but now everybody is kind of pushed forward, and that's the first thing they've got available.
Yeah, that's possible.
So I'm just wondering if things like that, whenever they start looking at changes, in other words, that if the 4F would have been moved into a later date this year as opposed to the date that they always had the last weekend of April, that some of these conventions that are forced into another square hole, basically, might find, hey, I'm comfortable there because we're getting more registrants than what we thought. That it might alter the way in the times of these conventions that traditionally are held on certain dates. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, there are a lot of other mitigating circumstances as far as pricing, seasons.
Right.
Factories can't be held in the summer because that's we're so close to Niagara Falls, the tourist season pops in, so the hotel rates would skyrocket.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though it's 30 miles away, people stay there to go to Niagara Falls.
Huh. Yeah, I've been over there a few times, and it's beautiful, but I never thought so much about, I guess, that, of course, being a destination location.
Yeah.
And
that's why the water park, is added to the hotel now. They get a lot of kids.
Interesting. I wanted to ask you also kind of like what's happening then in New York on the magic scene. Obviously not a lot of things right now during this shutdown, but anywhere around New York City. But the last time you and I spoke, I think was probably, I know we were at the SAM convention. Prior to that, you were performing then on Monday Night Magic.
No, I'm never there.
Was that not?
No. But I had my own series of shows going on at a theater in New York. But, everything is canceled. No, you can't have an audience. Me and my friends always go out to dinner maybe once a week or every other week. That's gone. Or anything that has to do with live interaction has ended pretty much.
Yeah, you can't convene. I'm sure the restaurants are all closed and everything except for carry-out.
Yeah, carry out, a lot of them. But I've noticed as I've been driving around, a lot of those people that were doing carry out last week have realized it's really not profitable for them, so they kind of shut down.
Yeah. Interesting. You just mentioned like a one-man show. What one-man show did you do for?
Well, I don't mean one-man show. I was producing a show with a bunch of friends at a small theater near the Tappan Zee Bridge in Nyack area. So we were doing that once in a while. It wasn't a regular schedule. It was just for fun.
Now, when you're doing that, what is it like to try to produce, promote, and market a show like that? I mean, what do you do? I mean, it's a huge entertainment venue in New York City with so many other things going on.
Well, this is outside of New York City, but the problem is you can't get an audience on a regular basis. I mean, I shouldn't say you can't. Obviously, Steve Cohen and others are doing it, for 20 years. Monday Night Magic, like you mentioned, have been doing it for a long time. But the hardest thing for me is to get a regular audience. And I don't want to work every week. I'm not that type. I don't need that. I like my peaceful life.
Yeah.
But getting an audience is difficult. If you do a show once a month, you're going to do okay. But it's very nerve-wracking because in the morning you call up the theater, hey, how many shows, how many tickets do we have pre-sold? And he would say something like 8. And I'm going, oh, my God, we're going to lose our shirt. And then by the time the show starts, we have the number we need, which is whatever, 90 or so. But it's very stressful, and I don't like that part of it.
I know that's true. When I was working with Jamie Salinas here with Top Talent Productions, and we had a monthly show as well, and likewise, we may only have a dozen seats sold until the day of, and then all of a sudden 30 or 40 more people show up.
But you can't plan, you can't plan your life that way. I mean, so I've pretty much decided to cut down. Me and my partner Harvey Leeds have co-produced this, and we're going to do it Halloween. So that'll be once a year. We might extend it to like every Friday the 13th of a year, maybe on April Fool's show. So kind of like thematic with the season.
Right.
Because we're doing this for fun. I'm basically inviting a bunch of my friends to perform on the show. The last Halloween show, we had about 10 performers per show. I gave them 10 minutes each. It was a lot of fun. It's called Magic After Dark.
So there was something Magic After Dark. It seems like that Phantasma had something that they are doing.
They just started a series of magic shows at this shop. But no, you're thinking of the one at Tannen's, which is
that's it.
With Noah Levine.
Yes.
It's not Magic After Dark. It's something similar. I'm forgetting the name, but it's very close. I didn't realize it at the time. When we were trying to come up with a name, Harvey suggested, hey, Playboy After Dark was a good name.
Yeah.
Let's just call it Magic After Dark. And, then Don Allen's name popped into my head. He used to be on, Playboy After Dark. So I thought, Magic After Dark is kind of cool. And that was the web address that was available as magicafterdark.net. So, you pointed out a series right there that I remember fondly seeing just a few episodes of that back. It was a black and white show with Hugh Hefner. Basically, it was like a house party, and he had Bill Cosby and all these different people, and Don Adams and whomever, they were coming in. There were comedians of the time and singers, Tony Bennett and whatnot. It was just kind of cool, hanging out like that. But I know he had a lot of magicians, including Harry Blackstone Jr., and you mentioned Don Allen and several others. I would love to be able to find those videos if they're someplace. Do you know if they're out? Have you seen them? I have no idea. I assume all of it is on YouTube or Daily Motion or somewhere.
Daily Motion, I hadn't thought about that, but I couldn't find them on YouTube. I'd taken a look at that then as well. Did you know Don Allen personally?
Not well, but we hung out a few times. I knew him, but I wouldn't say friends or anything like that.
I remember when
probably less than 10 times we've met over the years.
I remember when he lectured, and he was the guest of honor wasn't he the guest of honor at 4F one year?
I don't know. I don't think he was the guest of honor, but he did like the big opening show. Yeah. Or a lecture or something like that.
I remember him doing a lecture because he was, he showed this coat hanger from a coin purse.
Oh, yeah, that was great. That was my favorite part of the lecture.
I came home and made one of those.
With a little rubber loop. I made one as soon as I got home. But of course, now people ask you, what's a purse frame?
Well, that's an interesting point. I think a lot of people will question different props that magicians use now. I mean, that some things are not, quote, politically correct. If you use, not just the name of a Jap box or whatever else kind of a thing, or, a chink-a-chink kind of coins across that we used to call. But the point is of these colorful boxes and things, that, or like you mentioned, coin purses and things. I mean, what do you call them, or how do you, and I'm asking you this as a dealer, how are you marketing these things, or how do you select things that you want to sell that you think the public would understand and use?
Well, I'm weird that way. I never look at that. If I like it, I'll put the effort to put it out because it's just as easy. It takes just as much money and effort to put out a crappy trick as it does to put out a good trick.
Mm-hmm.
So I really have to like what I'm doing. And tastes change, the world change, and, you constantly adapt with it. It's like now that, not now, but for a long time, the buzzword has been organic. So as much as possible, I like to use organic props, things that exist in the real world and are easily identifiable.
Mm-hmm.
But, with the exception of card tricks.
I
love cards. I'm a card guy.
I do too. That's why we love the 4F convention. I was just Don Weiberg and I had spoken just this morning, and he was saying that someone had, again, we're kind of in this coronavirus, distancing thing right now, and so the best way to, someone had sent out a tweet from the newspaper who was one of the columnists and said, the best way to keep people away from you is saying, would you like to see a card trick?
Yeah. I was kidding about that early on. Here, you teach somebody a card trick, and he'll have social distancing.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. I like that. I don't like that, but I like that.
Yeah, I'm working on my next column for the Rivertown magazine, and I was thinking of starting that way, but I thought it's kind of in poor taste.
Speaking of that, I'm glad you mentioned about the Rivertown. That you had posted some links to that in your newsletter, which I thought was pretty darn cool. And I went to see some of that, and it's not like you're the master magician. You're not really teaching tricks,
right.
And exposing things, but they're kind of betches or gotchas, bar bets kind of thing. Isn't that right?
Some of them are simple tricks too. I always remember what Francis Marshall wrote, which is the difference between, basically there's a big difference between exposing and teaching. And the difference comes from the person you're exposing to or teaching to. If they put an effort to learn what you're trying to teach them, it becomes teaching. Mm-hmm. So this is obviously a general public magazine, and there's this magic tricks, whatever I call it, puzzles. Basically, I left it open to write whatever I feel like that month. It doesn't always have to be magic.
Yeah.
But I look at it as teaching, and the intro to every trick talks about some theory about magic or what is magic. So I try to educate about the history of magic. I quote magicians of the past, and then I teach a simple trick or a puzzle or a game or a scam or something.
And that's a free online thing that people could actually have a link to.
It's actually a beautiful printed magazine, but it's only available around here unless you subscribe to it. But yeah, it always is free online after that.
I recall some years ago.
Oh, except the next month I was told it's going to be digital because all the printers are out of business.
Oh, wow. Hadn't really thought about that, about how that's affecting them then as well. So it goes to completely digital, huh?
Yeah, for next month anyway.
Yeah. I'm hoping that things like that are happening then right now that's not going to affect us long term from the standpoint of putting people out of work.
Mm-hmm. Right. Not a big problem.
I've been hearing a little bit of controversy then right now about there's so much content on the social media, basically, whether it's Instagram.
Everybody's doing a video. I'm writing about that in tonight's column, kind of.
What are your thoughts? Well, by the time that people hear this your column will have already been published. But what are your thoughts on that? I'd rather not even get into my real thoughts because I think it's great. I think it's great that everybody's doing this, and I think everybody should take advantage of it if they have the time. I think like what the IBM is doing right now is fantastic with the daily lectures. I love Jeff McBride's Monday Night School. But the problem is don't get sucked into stuff that's going to be a time waster. Pick your favorite magicians and listen to them. But yeah, a lot of it is my comment was going to be the less snarky version of the comment is what's happening is a lot of performers, people that perform continuously all the time really need that kind of an outlet. They're so used to it. So they're doing these videos, I think, even though they don't realize it, is they're afraid of losing their relevancy. And it's also a matter of the ego. You constantly need to have your audience, applaud you, laugh at you, and you'll really miss that interaction. It's like all of a sudden
it's like I remember, when you go out and you do a show for magicians or whatever, and you get a standing ovation, it's like the greatest feeling in the world. And the next day you do a kid show and a bunch of little kids who really don't care about anything you're doing. You're just basically an overpriced babysitter.
Yeah.
Well, the way I used to do it anyway. I mean, I realize that there's some phenomenal children's performers. I don't mean to put them down. But the contrast, it gets a lot of people, in showbiz, you see all the actors and stuff ODing and doing drugs and stuff because of this withdrawal symptom. And when you're getting audience reactions and applause and stuff every day, and then you go cold turkey, it's got to affect your psyche. And I think a lot of it is this is their outlet to get people to like them or comment to them or have that interaction.
I see where you're going on there because, you want to have as many likes as you can. That's kind of the advantage of, I guess, that we're trying to do in the social media over there. I recall years ago when I was at Blackpool and Oscar Munoz had performed at the Winter Garden, and I don't know how 1,000 people were in the audience, and he won an award for his performance, and we were sitting having breakfast, and he said, well, when I get back to Texas, I've got a birthday party for Johnny next week. It's like
exactly,
it's a matter of perspective. You just got to keep working. Doesn't matter, large group, small group, whether they like you or not, you just keep on pushing through.
And when you don't have that outlet, and because all of us who perform are ego driven, we need that ego continuously fulfilled. And once that stops, you start doubting your relevance anymore.
That's a very good point. But another aspect of that I'd like your feelings on that is that some of these people then I'd say these people, us, who are gig employees basically, are looking for remuneration. I mean, some way of being paid for this. So I know some are thinking, well, okay, like I give Skype lessons. I've always given Skype lessons, but that's one way of revenue. But beyond that, of having like.
By the way, I think that's a fantastic opportunity now. People have the time to take the lessons, and some of the best magicians in the world now have the time to give those lessons. I would highly recommend people taking advantage of that.
Good advice. But the other thing I was thinking is that when someone is performing, if they have like a tip jar or something saying, hey, help me out, send something, show a little love here, PayPal me or something.
Yeah, and I've seen that PayPal donations as part of people's videos. But I don't know.
No, again,
it's very difficult. You don't want to look like you're begging.
Yes.
From your friends, especially. I mean, it's a really weird thing. I mean, I have to consider, do I keep doing my newsletter every Wednesday and Saturday? Because even though I'm having fun and kidding around, the purpose of the newsletter is to generate income.
Sure.
And I was going to, I kind of feel guilty. People, some of the people that are reading my newsletters are out of work and they don't have money. And here I am, subtly saying you should buy this. I mean, should I stop? And my friends who are much smarter than me told me, no, I shouldn't stop because, it is what it is.
Well, I agree with your friends on that because this is not something that you have started doing all of a sudden. This is something that had been your ongoing business, and you're continuing to do that. If someone then right now is looking to try to make money during this difficult time when people don't have money, then that's a different situation. If you're kind of reaching out and, I don't know, I've got mixed feelings. I've some people having problems making rent next month, and they need to have a crowdfunding page or a Patreon or something,
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very tough, people, and, in small business and, the gig economy, a lot of times we're living, week to week, month to month. We don't have like a 3-month savings to pay our expenses. And it's very tough for a lot of people.
Well, particularly younger people who have gotten into magic and thinking this is great. I really enjoy, being an entrepreneur and self-employed, and they're 27 years old and haven't lived long enough to kind of start having a savings of any kind,
Right. And you and I have lived through these downturns in the past. So we're kind of like, oh, okay, we just keep it. And I think, I say that, but I think magicians are positioned in a unique way because, yes, there's a performance end of magic, but there's also this problem-solving end of constantly adapting. When you create a trick, you start with a premise and then you start making mistakes, trying to put it together and changing it and adapting it. And we have that puzzle mentality, and we use that in real life as well. So whenever, things happen to us, we're always looking for solutions. We're not looking to just give up. It's just not in our nature. Mm-hmm. Because right now I was just reading on the news that there are tons of jobs available around here as far as like food delivery and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Uber Eats and all that.
Yeah, tons of those. And also Amazon, which is not too far from me, is now hiring a lot of people. Walmart is hiring a lot of people. So these are not the ideal jobs, to do a career with. But, you could make enough, for food and, necessities. And cell phone, of course, you can't live without your cell phone.
Right. But those are also costly, where there are monthly bills and whatnot that you have to pay. And so it's just, again, like during the holidays in which that those companies ramp up because they need more employees.
Yeah.
But my degree was in advertising early on, my undergraduate degree.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and one of the things I remember from that is not to advertise during times when people are not looking to buy, which runs antithesis to what you would normally think. It's like, hey, times are slow. You need to advertise, let people know we're here. Well, there may be a reason why they're not buying.
Right.
And likewise, you think, well, I'm not going to advertise, let's say, around Christmas because everyone's out buying anyhow. They're going to come by my store. Well, no, that is the time because that is when they're looking for you.
Competition, yeah.
Right. And if they see you advertising and someone else not, then they're going to go spend their money at your place because they got the money to spend. But if, for an example, if you're going to be a restaurant magician, I wouldn't go in necessarily on a slow night to say, I can help increase your business tonight. You're not, you may or may not be able to follow up on what you said you can do. More than likely you can't. There's a reason why that perhaps that's a slow night. Monday nights are slow and Sunday nights for obvious reasons.
Right.
So you're not going
Absolutely right.
Yeah. So it's the same thing like with advertising. You wouldn't advertise during a time when people are not necessarily going to buy. So it's one of those times I think of just kind of being soothing and saying, hey, we're still here without trying to be too forceful and trying to, push.
Exactly. But not only that, your customer base is affected in different ways in this particular case. Mm-hmm. People that, work for like federal, state, local government. Or, a lot of them are still working, of course, but the ones that have been furloughed are staying home with full pay or very close to full pay. Mm-hmm. Industries that are subsidized by government are, people are staying home with full pay. So they're not affected financially as much as like the performers or the service industry is, or people that work for large corporations and stuff. I hate to say it, but they're almost getting a free vacation out of this.
Well, that's true. I understand what you're saying, and you got to wonder about how long will that go on. Depends upon
and those people are right now supporting me. I've noticed in the past week or so that the people that have regular job now, they have a regular job plus a lot of extra free time. Mm-hmm. And I think deep down they realize that they're supporting me or other magicians and stuff because we don't have it as good.
So have you noticed, of course, we're again kind of at the beginning of this, and so have you noticed leveling off, upturn, downturn as far as business in general?
Quantity wise has gone down. But of course, I'm not pushing as hard. I'm not releasing new products, because I think it's a mistake to do that now. And I had a bunch of products, online, ready in different versions of production. I was going to release a bunch of stuff in April for Factors, and I had another bunch of stuff released, for August for Magic Live, and all of that stuff's on hold now because I think it's just a mistake to. I think I'll still sell them if I put it out now. I just feel awkward offering it. Mm-hmm. It's like a certain percentage of my mailing list is not doing as well as they should be.
Yeah, well, again, because people are not looking to spend money unless that they are those people who are exempt employees already who do have some income coming in, but those who are hourly employees or who have lost their jobs or gig employees, or I consider actors obviously to be gig employees because between movies or television shows, they're not working.
But a lot of them can get on unemployment insurance between movies. Magicians don't get unemployment between the restaurant gigs.
That's a good point. Yeah, that what was it? I saw something else, another meme the other day about the magician going in and looking for unemployment, and they started looking down to see what they qualify for, and they said, okay, you get here 5 free drinks.
Yeah, if that much. Yeah.
So yeah,
no, it's tough. It's tough.
It really is. I was going to ask about Harry Lorraine. He's been a longtime friend of yours, and Harry has got to be pushing 90, I guess, isn't he? How old is he?
Oh, no, more than, I think he turns 95 or 96 next month.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Is he still just as sharp as ever?
Yeah, he really is. He really is. He has arthritis in his hands, so he can't do the same stuff that he used to. But no, sharp-wise, yes, very much so. Long-term memories is not as good, I think, as short-term, which is the opposite of what most people in that age are. But he's one of the younger people that I talk to. The other day I spoke to Sal Stone, who will be, I think, 98 this year. 2 days ago I spoke to George Schindler. I think he's either 95 or 96 around now. John Mintz is early 90s. All my friends are basically in their 90s.
It makes you feel so young, doesn't it?
Yeah. Who else? There was someone else I just spoke to who's in their mid-90s. I forget, but yeah, it's really funny.
How did you come across Harry? Was it one of the Saturday morning meetings or something?
Saturday afternoon every in the 70s, which is when I started hanging around with magicians. At the cafeteria every Saturday afternoon, Harry would be there almost every single week. It was the beginning of Apocalypse. And he was looking for material, so he just, or people that contributed material, he'd show us all the stuff, so he could, if he taught us the routine, it was easier for him to write it when he got home.
Let's clarify that, by the way, Apocalypse, the magazine.
The magazine, yes, it was a monthly magazine.
Because we're in a difficult time right now.
Yeah, didn't even think of that. But the Saturdays in New York City were unbelievable, 70s and 80s and into the 90s a little bit.
That was when Imam was around.
Before that, actually, yeah.
Oh, okay.
What happens is everybody would show up at Tannen's around noon to 1 p.m. And everybody was there. It was like a who's who in New York City magic. Legends and soon to be legends. So we'd all be hanging around. And me, I don't mean to be put
that was the time when
in that category.
Frank Garcia and Harry Lorraine were still friends.
They stood at opposite corners of the
even back then.
Store.
Okay.
This was like at the beginning of their rivalry.
Okay.
So they were all there, David Roth. Everybody was there. So we'd be at Tannen's from, let's say, 1 to 3 when Tannen's closed. And then we would all walk to a cafeteria or a diner or a restaurant. It changed over the years. But we'd go there and we'd hang out till 6. So from 3 to about 6, Harry Lorraine was in the cafeteria doing card tricks for everybody nonstop.
Wow.
And early on, I would say he was the nicest person to me. While a lot of people, hid what they were doing from me because I was a young kid, Harry would actually show me the stuff. He was very open, very friendly, and I really appreciated that because whatever he would show me on a Saturday, I would be practicing and show him the following Saturday, and he'd give me some tips on it. And then the cafeteria would continue. So at 6 o'clock, this big group would break down into like a couple of smaller groups who would now go to another restaurant. And we'd hang out there till, 11 p.m. or so. And then after that, we'd go to either a bar or a Italian dessert place that was open all night. So Saturdays were like unbelievable back then. It was like a full day of magic with many of the best magicians in the world.
Wow.
At the time. That's how I made a lot of friends.
It's kind of like a mini one-day convention every week.
Every single Saturday. And to be honest with you, it all started Friday night or Friday afternoon because on Friday, Tannen's was open till about 5. And the magicians that worked in the New York City area would come to Tannen's after work. And then we would go to dinner after Tannen's closed somewhere, different places. And after dinner was the IBM or SAM meeting on Friday nights, which people start arriving about 7. So you'd have the IBM or SAM meeting, almost the same, different people than the cafeteria, but there were there were some that were in both groups.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd hang out at the IBM or SAM meeting till whatever, 11 o'clock or 10:30, and then we'd go to dinner at some all-night diner or deli, and we would do that till probably 1, 2, 3 in the morning.
Wow.
And then we'd start up again on Saturday. So my life for at least 10 years was like Friday afternoon till, early Sunday morning was continuous magic.
Man. And I assume that whoever happened to be in town, some visiting magicians would stop by then as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, from all over the world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got to meet a lot of, all of a sudden Tom Maurice shows up, it was everybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if there were some people
because if you remember back then, Kennedy Airport, New York City was kind of like, if you wanted to fly into the U.S., you basically flew into New York and then caught another flight. So a lot of them would fly to New York anyway, stay a few extra days, and then go to wherever they were going.
It wasn't LaGuardia more like the international airport than you would fly actually?
It was actually Kennedy.
Was it Kennedy? Okay.
Yeah. LaGuardia now is international. It was less so back then.
Mm-hmm. So you had a lot of people who were coming in and just kind of hanging out for a few days and then going to wherever they wanted after that.
Yeah, whether it's a magic convention or whatever,
Who do you remember coming in that was not local that comes to mind aside from Juan Tamariz?
Everybody. Sylvan would show up. Just everybody. There was a group from South Africa, Cyril Fanaroff, and all those guys. They would come in bunches too. Like, let's make a vacation out of it, and hit hit a bunch of magic conventions, but we have to stop by New York first, kind of thing. Everybody.
Are there still some tricks that you remember from those early younger days that Harry may have taught you, or others that you're still have in your repertoire?
Oh yeah. There are a bunch of them. Actually, a lot of. They say that when you're creative, most of your creativity comes at around the age of 18 to, let's say, 20 or 21. And then you spend the rest of your life doing variations of what you came up with at that age.
I've heard that.
And it's the same thing with magic. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the skills and routines that you learn when you're in that 18 to 20 age group before life gets in the way, stays with you, and you end up doing versions of it, and you keep improving it, changing the presentation, updating it to the way you look now, the way you act now, and stuff. But a quick 3-way was one of my favorites back then. I still do that. There's a dice thing that I used to do that I'm going to do a download with because nobody really does it anymore. But a lot of the tricks I came up with back then, the compute card, my finger routine, all of those things I still do.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember any particular stories that Harry had told you? I'm just fascinated. I'd like perhaps to get a chance to visit with him and perhaps have him.
Oh, I think he would love it.
Oh, would he? Okay, good. Well, he might put me in touch with him later, and I'll
sure.
reach out to try to do that. But I would think he'd have some great stories, being a friend of Mel Brooks.
I somewhere around here I have an autograph. One time he was going on vacation. I said, "Hey, can you get me an autographed picture of Anne Bancroft and Mel Brooks?" And he said, "Sure." He came back from vacation. He gave me an 8x10. Both of them signed it to me.
Wow.
I thought it was great. But he had tons of stories, and like he says, most of those stories are in the back of Apocalypse, the Out to Lunch column.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably heard all of them live, but I don't really remember too many of them.
Well, yeah.
Unless you trigger my memory somehow, and
that's a good point.
But I loved Harry. Harry was like a big influence to me.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you about him, just to kind of get your thoughts and recollections, I guess, a little bit about him, because he is influential. I recall one time at the 4F convention in which that he was I think he was a guest of honor, and he was lecturing, and that was back when we were upstairs at the Forks Hotel, and I was sitting in the front row, and I had a cassette recorder, which I put then on the table to record, and I remember that whenever that he finished, or the recorder popped open, it stopped, popped open, and he just stopped in the middle of that, and he said, "I'll wait," and I turned it over, I flipped it over, put it back in, and hit record, and he said, "Okay, let's go."
I'm surprised you had enough tape, because he was, you'd read all the reviews of his lectures,
Yep.
And it's like, man, Harry Lorraine just did he was booked to do an hour lecture, and he went on for like 4 to 6 hours.
That's exactly what happened. And in fact, I think I had 2 tapes, and they filled up, and he went on till 3 in the morning. And it's like, I don't have any more cassettes.
But that's what it was like every single Saturday. I mean, it was just like nonstop. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
I was attracted to people that had a passion for magic. A lot of people, start out with this great passion, and it fades away when life gets in the way. And Harry wasn't like that. He always had that passion. He still does. He's still working on, material and stuff.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you as well. Whenever that he was performing, and you saw him, go on for hours like that, was it material of his or variations of somebody else's, or was he creating it on the spot, or just trying something out, or a little bit of it all?
Mostly it was back then he was doing the monthly magazine Apocalypse, so he was always getting contributions from people, and he would try those out on us continuously. And then we'd make suggestions, and like his afterthoughts column was basically everybody's suggestions and his ideas about the trick. But once in a while he'd do his own material, but it was because somebody new came by and asked for it or whatever. But he knew it's the same audience every single week, so he's not going to repeat himself.
Right. I would certainly recommend to the listeners to go back and to seek out the bound volume of Apocalypse. I believe L&L published that. Is that right?
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
To go back and pick up something. And in fact, I was just talking about all this content that's been out there that Michael Close has been doing, a daily thing as well, and that he reached in and pulled a couple things.
I see you're doing daily updates as well, which is kind of cool.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you appreciate that. I was trying to think whether I should. I got a couple of different other ideas and things. I want to kind of keep it brief, but
I think that's important. I think a lot of people are going on for like an hour or half an hour. I think that's too long. I think you do 5-10 minutes. That's really all that's necessary these days.
Yeah, I agree. I was starting to watch something the other day that had already been recorded, and then whenever I started it, then I noticed it said 7 hours. And I thought, okay, I watched about a minute, and I said, okay, I don't want to get into all this.
Exactly.
A little bit much, for that. The Apocalypse is great, and as I said, Michael Close has been doing a couple things. I mean, you can pull things out. Now's a good time which you can go back in and find these gems, and that if you could, afford that. And I think that's probably a fairly cheap book to buy now, too, but I don't know.
Apocalypse? No, I mean, the bound volumes, I think, I have no idea. I think they're out of print, so it's probably going to cost you $100 or so. But
all right. Well, that's the thing.
And they're like 5 volumes, so.
You can check out with our sponsor. We got a sponsor.
But his DVDs are available, which is the highlights from the magazine.
Oh, I didn't know he had that.
That was like 8 or 9 volumes of DVDs, and I think they're all available on downloads everywhere. Because it was originally part of the L&L line. Yeah.
Our sponsor, themagicbookshop.com, has rare and out-of-print books, and so perhaps that might be a place to go and check.
Also, I'm sure he'd have it,
because a lot of people have collections in which they have sold to him, and he's selling. So kind of interesting. So what is your next project then, Meir?
I'm working on 7 projects right now.
You astound me.
Simultaneously. I don't know if I really hate to tell people in advance what I'm working on, because sometimes I think, I'm about a month away from putting it out, but then other things get in the way, or I change my mind, and it turns out to be years. But I could mention this one thing. Of course, our mutual friend Gary Plans. Yeah. He had a big, nice business of all kinds of like cool card tricks.
Yes. The plant, I think it was called the card plant.
Yeah, the card plant, exactly. Well, we've been talking a lot lately, and it looks like I'll be putting out a lot of the card tricks that he originally put out.
That's great.
That's one thing I'm working on, except it's going to be with download videos and things like that.
On Gary Plants.
Here's a non-magic thing I'll tell you I'm working on, and I'm a coward, and I keep putting it off. But a lot of my friends are doing, a lot of the magicians now that are out of work are growing beards because they wanted to see what they look like, right?
Now's a good time.
Yeah, exactly. They all want to look like you. You were ahead of the game. But the one thing I've been thinking about, is shaving my head bald. I wanted to shave my head while it was still up to me. you know?
Yes.
The toppy's emptying, my forehead is getting longer, and it was always scary because my fear is that me looking bald would not fit my performing personality.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have like a flippant style that jokes around and self-deprecating, would that fit a bold version of me? Or would people start taking me too seriously, which means I would have to change everything? So now I'm very tempted. Probably I keep putting it off by a week, but I'm hoping this weekend shave my head and see what it looks like.
You might put a bald cap on to begin with, one of those skin wigs or things.
Yeah, it's either all or nothing. It's not the same. Somebody sent me an app, a photo that does that, and so, you can't really tell
until you actually do it. Well,
since I've no live appearances scheduled, pretty much for the rest of the year, so I can do it.
You could try that. My son is in the hospital going through leukemia, and he said, well, thank you. I just had stem transplant just a couple weeks ago, and just this last week, finally, after chemo and radiation and everything, that finally his hair was starting to come out, so they just shaved it. So for the first time in his life, he's bald, and also shaved his beard, and, all the hair on his chest and every place, all just kind of fell out. And so they said they didn't want to use a razor blade because of risk of infection, so they used a razor, regular, on an electric razor. But anyhow, to see him bald, I've not seen him that way since he was born as an infant, He looks so different, Yeah. So it's one of those things.
Does it make him look older? That's my other fear.
Well, he has grown a little bit of a mustache, so he has a little kind of a soul patch and a Adolf Hitler mustache right now. So, So seeing a bald Adolf, it's kind of weird.
That's funny.
And then because of steroids, his face is kind of blown up a little bit then too. So anyhow, but whether he looks older, I hadn't thought about that. But I guess in a way that he does look a little bit older with that, because you don't know if a person's hair, if it were to grow out, was going to be gray or not. I used to color my hair for the longest time, and I thought, and then when I started growing a beard, it's like, that didn't look right, gray beard and dark hair. And so my wife had said, you got to choose one or the other, so just let it go. And so,
but this gives us all an opportunity to try different things because we don't have shows all the time, or public appearances in my case.
Public appearances, people are still posting pictures, as you said. You're trying to grow a beard, and I've seen some people who have posted, it's like, haven't seen you with a beard before. Well, you know. They're home, and another thing is now it's like, okay, well, it's time to change from my daytime pajamas to my nighttime pajamas.
Right.
So we're all kind of relaxing at home. Well, listen, we start to wrap up. First of all, I want to thank you very much for your time, and that wish you good luck with continued success in projects and products that you're working on then right now.
Oh, thank you, Scott.
And also, because my podcast is called The Magic Word, I'm curious to know, what is your philosophy of life? Not necessarily just now, but kind of in general. What do you live by? What's
probably I would say adapt or perish. I just thought of this because pretty much my whole life is adaptation or perish. From magic, car accidents, businesses, the economy. Earlier I spoke about, problem solving. It's really a matter of adaptation. People worry about, staying relevant, as they get older. It's really about adaptation. You have to go with the times, whatever is next, I'm ready for it.
And don't be afraid. Yeah.
Don't be afraid. That's important. Don't be afraid to fail. Because failure is part of the adaptation.
That's right. You got to try some new things, and now's a good time to kind of practice on some things when you come back out on the road and in front of an audience, that you will have some new stuff to try, and don't worry about failing. Yeah.
And I said that in my column, I think a couple of weeks ago. It was advice I got from Ace Greenberg. Whereas like when other companies are laying people off, we should be hiring. When other companies are contracting, we should be expanding. And my point was, everything in life is cyclical. You could graph it on a bar chart. Whether it's your health, whether it's your finances, just everything is cyclical. And when things are low, if you prepare for when things get better, you're going to be ahead of a lot of people that were just trying to survive. So I hope, I said that in my column, and I hope people paid attention, because now is the time to prepare for when things get better. And they always do.
Sure.
Almost always. I shouldn't say that. Almost always do.
It's a pendulum. It goes back and forth.
Exactly.
Yes. And for those people who, by the way, aren't subscribed to your newsletter, how can they get on to that?
Just go to mymagic.com, and near the top there'll be the word newsletter. Click on that, give me your email address, and I will send you junk mail for the rest of your life.
It's not junk. I enjoy reading it, and I recommend it. I know a lot of people have newsletters, and I've got a pod letter, I call it, for people to read, and that just try to keep it brief and something that is interesting, and so
I try to send them out every Wednesday night and every Saturday morning, 2 a week.
Yeah. Well, good luck. Thanks, Meir, very much again for being my guest.
Thank you very much, Scott. All the best to you and your family.
Thank you. You as well. Stay safe, stay well. And until next time, that was Meir Yedid. This is Scotty out. Well, I want to thank my guest, Mr. Meir Yedid, for speaking to us this week, since we were communicating via Skype back and forth. And thank you for making some time. And I certainly enjoyed our chat, and I hope that you, the listener, enjoyed that and got a lot out of it then as well. Well, each week we try to feature someone really interesting and entertaining, and we're going to continue that from week to week as we continue to go forward. And this week we were talking here with Meir, who is on the board of directors of the Obie's 4F convention, the Fechter's Finger Flicking Frolic. And next week, I'll give you a sneak preview right now. We're going to be talking with Joe M. Turner, who is one of the MCs also of the 4F convention. Since we're not going to be able to attend a convention since it's been canceled, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to go back and just kind of reminisce about some of the previous conventions and some of the highlights, and talk with Joe about that, since he's attended quite a few of those then as well and been intimately involved as Master of Ceremonies. Anyhow, that's going to be coming up then next week. I want to encourage everybody that if you have not already subscribed to our pod letter, make sure that you do that. It gives you that kind of information about who's going to be coming up from week to week, and also some sort of insight as to what we are doing each week. And also you can be among the first then to register for the different contests, which I want to remind you again about the contest that's going to be continuing to run right now for the 2 bundles of 5 ebooks from Michael Breger. So go to the podcast blog there at themagicwordpodcast.com and scroll down to the bottom of the page for this particular episode 555. And as long as the contest is running, that blog will have that registration form where you can register, and you can live anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter, since this is going to be sent via email. So all we need is just your email address, and then if you're one of the 2 lucky people whose name is randomly drawn, then you will get that ebook bundle. And thank you, Michael, for contributing that. If you happen to watch YouTube, I'm thinking about doing some live YouTube videos, but I have to have at least 1,000 subscribers, and I only have about 600 right now. So if you're interested in seeing this podcast grow over on YouTube, go over to my YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and do a search for Scott Wells, and please subscribe to the channel. And when we get over 1,000, then we will see about doing something a little bit different to add to your enjoyment of this podcast. One last thing I want to leave you with, and that is something that many of you have asked about my son, Nick. I have mentioned him in the past having leukemia and having to go through stem cell treatment, and I want to report some good news from the standpoint that he was released from the hospital. I believe it was on the 20th of March, actually, and that he's been doing well. The doctor is really pleased with his blood numbers and seems to be recovering, that his body seems to be accepting the stem cells quite well. He has to be in isolation for 100 days and kind of keep away from people, but his family is very supportive. I have 2 granddaughters. His 2 daughters are keeping him running crazy, but he's resting, and his wife is supportive, and so things are going well. So thank you for your thoughts and prayers and your texts and emails and asking about him. So he is doing well then also. So until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember to adapt or perish. This is Scotty out.